Alright, welcome to Expats On Air. This is a show where expats get together online and just talk. So we're here today with Greyson and Dan. Can I say Dan?假老外. Alright, I won't say your last name. So假老外, you can find him on Douyin if you have a Chinese TikTok account. He's like a real KOL over there, a real key opinion leader. Well, how many fans do you have?
160,000.
Nice.
Wow.
Okay, so I'll let you all do an intro. How about we start with Greyson? Why don't you tell us about yourself?
All right, I'm Greyson. My online handle is American Greyson. I stream on D Live with a show called Pure Politics. And a lot of my content in America is political focused, but on here at Expats On Air, we're going to be talking about my China experience. And I did live in China for several years. So that's my good intro.
Cool. Dan?
Yeah, hey guys, my name's Dan,假老外. I've been living in China for about 7 years. I'm from Connecticut, US originally, and I don't know if I consider myself a China expert, but I do speak Chinese fluently, and I've been making Chinese TikTok Douyin for about a year, and doing pretty well with it.
Cool. So how'd you get into the TikTok thing?
Well, I think most everybody who comes to China teaches English at some point, but we probably also all experienced the boredom and frustration of just endless, washing machine cycles of classes over and over. So I guess I had the idea of teaching English through TikTok so I could, reach a wider audience and also maybe incorporate some more creative ways of teaching.
Cool. And Greyson, you're a bit of a content creator. Do you want to plug your channels or anything like that?
Yeah, Pure Politics, Pure, on YouTube. And then if you go to dlive.tv/American Greyson, Greyson, those are my two main channels. And I usually invite people to Telegram through those. And Telegram's a lot of the same content, so.
Cool. So, Dan, your name has some literal Chinese in it, the handle. So we'll drop that in the description if you want to search out Dan's channel. Although if you're using the American TikTok, you won't be able to find him there.
Yeah, I have a TikTok account, but it's not active, so not worth it.
Cool. So you guys both lived in Beijing, and that's why I wanted to talk to you. I want to talk to some real Beijing Expat Boyz. So when did you all live over there?
Greyson?
Well, I think the end of 2015 up until February 2020. I think that's about the time range, because I remember I went there before Trump was president, and then I got back right when the China virus stuff was happening.
For me, I first came to China in 2012. I was still in college. I did an au pair homestay program. Then I went back, finished college, came back in 2014, and been here pretty much ever since. So I would say more or less 2014 to 2021.
Cool. And you guys knew each other in Beijing. So Greyson, you're obviously not there anymore, but Dan, you're still in Beijing. How did you all meet?
The internet. I'm not sure if Dan and I met through the Pure Politics political debate group or not. We did. All right. So I run a political debate group in China, or it's still going, and it's became notorious because we had a bunch of free speech restrictions in there of where if you wanted to have controversial opinions, you could talk about them and you could bring up these different subjects that were not being allowed in America. And you could generally just discuss politics without having to worry about being censored. Of course, we did have some clamp down on stuff like Fed posting or threatening to kill people, but with everything else, it it's open game with the Pure Politics Political Debate Group, and I think that's how Dan and I met.
Okay, just to pause for a second. There's a lot of stuff you mentioned there that may sound familiar if you've lived in China, you've been on WeChat, you know about all these different group chats that pop up and become really popular amongst, let's say, the expat community. Some of them are political, some of them are about travel or what have you. So, I mean, I'm in so many WeChat groups, and I've met a lot of people in different cities in China, other expats, and actually, made some nice friendships out of it, meeting strangers on the internet. So you've created this group on WeChat, Pure Politics.
Oh, no, I didn't create it. I inherited it from a British fellow, conservative British guy, and he really liked my passion and how much I was into politics, so he just kind of gifted it to me.
Okay, and then you said the key word, Fed posting. Can you explain what that means?
It's just basically Fed posting is when you talk about committing actions of violence. So that's a big no-no. You can talk about revolutionary stuff, you can talk about history, but for Fed posting, you can't. We don't really like when people are threatening to kill other people or asking other people to kill other people. That's a big no-no for political debate.
We kind of don't really like it when you threaten to blow people's heads off. It's kind of a little uncouth. So why is it Fed, though?
I think that's just an internet slang that kind of comes from 4chan, probably. I'm not an expert about the origins of that.
Okay, I'm just asking you because I wanted you to explain. So it's basically the phenomena where, let's say the FBI, they're going to bust a terrorist, but then it turns out that the FBI set up the whole terror plot and found some weirdo who's not very smart. They gave him all the equipment he needed to do the attack, and he did it. And it's essentially a play on that where the feds are sort of creating this turmoil or something, or creating terrorism, essentially, so they can bust it. So where it applies online is maybe they're in a group chat full of, let's say, right-wing people, and they're in there trying to get people riled up and commit acts of violence so they can bust them doing acts of violence. So we went off on that tangent. That really has not much to do with being an expat or WeChat.
Should we explain to the viewers, what WeChat is? I'm not sure everyone.
Go for it.
I mean, I think for people who haven't lived in China, it would be hard to overestimate how important WeChat is. And if you haven't lived here, it'd be hard to understand how totally integrated it is with everything. It's pretty much like every app, or at least the top 10 apps combined. So it's like you got a Twitter-like functionality, Facebook-like functionality, and then just a messaging functionality. So people in China, in America, people still use text messages all the time, right? But in China, people don't really use text messages; they just use WeChat. If you meet somebody, no matter whether it's a friend or business partner or whatever, you're gonna add their WeChat immediately, and then keep in contact with them through WeChat. But then you also, as I said, you can post photos, like a timeline functionality, and then they also have payment integrated through it. So if you want to go, like use your WeChat all the time to pay for things, etc. So it's pretty much like what do they call it? A multi-tool app.
Yeah, it's an everything app.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's become so ingrained. Like people do a lot of their purchases through WeChat, and you go to a shop, 7-Eleven, you buy a drink, maybe using WeChat for that. And then it's become so common that a lot of shops are only taking mobile payment. Could be WeChat, could be another tool called Alipay. So then if you happen to say something controversial on WeChat and your account gets locked, you have no access to that commerce factor.
Oh, yeah.
It can really mess your life up if you are, let's say you are Chinese, you have nowhere else to go, and you get blocked from WeChat, Alipay, you're screwed.
I'm just going to give a little bit of a story. I had a lot of cash. I like to use cash in China, and I never got into the WeChat Pay thing, and I noticed that a lot of people, they really want you to pay digitally, but when you pull out a fat stack of cash, all of a sudden their mood changes, and the Chinese comes out in them where they want to bargain, and then you kind of get going. But if you don't pull out cash, and that's kind of not a thing you can do all the time, then they don't want to take your money. They're like, you got to do digital.
Yeah, and I've been locked out of my WeChat, I think 4 times. I've been to WeChat jail 4 times, so it was a real hassle if a lot of your work communication is through WeChat. And you have like 16 group chats for 16 different projects with your job, and if you can't get on WeChat, you're left out of all that. So fortunately, my team had to use WhatsApp to deal with a client because they weren't in China, so I was able to still carry on my work without WeChat, but it could have been really devastating if I wasn't in that circumstance.
Yeah, I'm teaching at an international school now, and I keep in touch with my students through WeChat every day. I send them their homework just by sending a message on WeChat. And I guess that's the other functionality, is the group chats. Because I think like in America we have Facebook, but you don't really add people you don't know well on Facebook. But with WeChat, it's very easy to set up a group chat with a bunch of people who may or may not know each other personally. And, the group Greyson was talking about, Pure Politics, is an example of that. Like, when I first got added to that group, I didn't know anybody in this group of 50 people, but it's, a group of shared interests. So everybody's interested in politics. And, you get to know people through these group chats.
Yeah, you don't really see that with Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp. But, I mean, I would say you see that with Telegram, though. I find, like, there's a lot of communities in Telegram where strangers don't mind getting together with, like-minded point of views, that kind of stuff.
True. And Greyson, I went and checked you originally added me because you're going to add me to a different WeChat group, News of the World.
Oh, yeah. I got kicked out of that.
Back in 2018. And then back then, I remember you were totally anonymous. Like, nobody knew what you looked like, but you sent me this photo of you.
Oh, yeah. So handsome back then.
So that was like the first, glimpse I got of your face. Why were you anonymous back then?
Well, I used to have my name and my face, and then as soon as I start talking about politics, a lot of trolls come out of the woodwork. And it's a lot like here in America, is where if you hold the wrong opinion, all these people are going to come out and denigrate you and try to destroy your life. And they go after where you work. They go after your family. So talking about politics in the beginning, being in China, I was like, let's kind of not have my face on there, because it keeps getting put into Photoshop stuff and everybody keeps trying to call my work. And when they did call my work, lo and behold, the Chinese are very conservative. And it's very interesting, though, these leftist trolls. Most of them are leftists, which is interesting. But these trolls come out when you have the wrong opinion and they try to destroy your life.
Wait, so these were foreigners going after you in China?
Oh, yeah, other foreigners
God.
start talking about politics, and everybody starts having their own opinions, and then they get really angry when then you're not agreeing with them.
Yeah, I don't know if most of the trolls are leftist, but most of the trolls who targeted you would be leftist.
Yeah, that's a good observation. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, because you could get problems with Chinese people if you're saying something that's not politically correct. But from the Chinese point of view, politically correct is, following the party line. That's political correctness in China, whereas you're dealing with people with American left-right tedious politics, right?
Oh, yeah, and with WeChat, they have a lot of free speech. I've never been in trouble with Chinese speech laws. I've had, until I got to America, of course. I'm going to put that on there. The whole time I'm in China, I'm talking about politics. Every single time that I did they'd try reporting me, they'd try telling people about me, and every single time the Chinese are just like, duh, this guy makes a lot of sense. He's very rational.
Well, I have been targeted. WeChat jail 4 times for speech that I guess wasn't safe for WeChat. And then I used to have some channels on like Yoku and Tudo, and it was a different kind of content. We could maybe talk about that later, but I've been censored a lot in China. So whenever people are like, the Chinese internet's more open, even though we got a lot of that bullshit right now with, Twitter mobs, and I guess we have a lot of bullshit with the platforms themselves these days, censoring and everything, but I'd still say it's a bit more free in the West, a little bit.
Well, but I think you guys are talking about different content. Greyson was talking about American political content. You can say almost anything you want on WeChat about American politics, no matter how offensive it is by American standards. The Chinese don't care. Likewise, you can say anything you want in China, in America about China. Americans don't care, but when it comes to their own countries, talking about their own country, then it's much more sensitive, right?
Well, if it's racist, they probably care in America.
Right, exactly. You mean racist towards Chinese?
Yeah. I think some people might have a problem with that. Probably a lot of people.
Sure, but I mean, you can criticize, the CCP. You can say whatever you want about Taiwan, all this stuff in China. That's absolutely off limits, right?
Do you know that old
the
Soviet joke? Do you know what I'm talking about, Greyson?
The old Soviet joke? No.
It's like a free speech thing. Shit, I'm gonna butcher it because I don't remember exactly, but it's like some Russian dude is like, I have free speech here in Moscow too. I can also like insult the American president at the Red Square in Moscow.
Right.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I
kind
of butchered that.
Touch
there.
on what Dan
Wasn't very
said.
eloquent. Say again. Sorry.
You can't even talk about Taiwan in China, and I disagree with that because I did have a lot of conversations. Taiwan is a sensitive subject, but as its entire thing, it's not off limits. Like if you want to talk about the Kuomintang and their relationship with 1930s Germany, the National Socialist Party, you can totally do that in China. It's perfectly open. But if you want to talk about the National Socialist relationship with the Kuomintang here in America, I've noticed a lot of people try and shut it down.
Can you explain what Kuomintang is?
The KMT, they're the Chinese Republic over there in Taiwan right now.
Yeah, so that was the initial government that went over to Taiwan. It was just not the government of Taiwan, it's the government of China, Republic of China, but it was just exiled in Taiwan. But now they have a multi-party system, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool. You been to Taiwan, Dan?
Well, I just didn't quite understand. You're saying that you could compare the KMT to Nazis in China and they wouldn't care, but if you compare the KMT to Nazis in America, they would be offended, or?
Well, basically, from my personal experience, and it's probably not comprehensive, I never got in trouble in China for talking about the National Socialist relationship to the KMT, about how they provided them weapons, training, they sent Nazi generals over, and even the retreat to Taiwan was orchestrated by Chinese generals who were trained by the Nazis who actually fought in Europe at one point in time. And then when I talk about this in America, all of a sudden I get these people coming out reporting me, and Twitter says that's not okay. You can't be talking about it. And Facebook says you can't talk about it. So that's just my personal experience.
That sounds about right. Twitter and Facebook these days.
Yeah, I mean, when I said Taiwan, obviously, I don't mean anything about Taiwan, but the issue of Taiwan's statehood or independence is one of the three T's, right? Taiwan, Tiananmen Square, and Tibet. Those are the three that you're not allowed to talk about.
Yeah, and if Dan's Zoom just goes radio silence, it's because the party got him.
He mentioned the three T's. We'll know why.
Yeah.
You'll know, you guys will know why.
I was talking to a dude yesterday who was in Shanghai, and he called in on Zoom. It actually worked. I was afraid the connection wouldn't be strong enough with the VPN and the firewall. It's actually looking all right.
It seems okay. It's a bit laggy for me, but it seems not terrible.
So you have to use a VPN in China to use Zoom?
No, I'm not using a VPN.
Okay.
No, that's good. So you haven't been to Taiwan, Dan?
So...
Who?
Have you been to Taiwan, Dan?
Yeah, I lived actually in Taipei for 3 months.
Okay.
It's a great place. It's kind of combines, well, I don't know if I'd say the best, but combines some elements of China, and then they got the Japanese elements from when they were a Japanese colony, and kind of it's easier for Americans than moving to China, I would say.
Yeah, how would you guys compare Taiwan to China? Or the mainland, rather.
Dan, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's a Western democracy, so you have the freedom of speech that you're used to. People use Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. I think, also culturally, they're just, I think, like I said, their colonial history is probably a big part of, what makes them the country they are today. I think, being conquered by Japan and being a Japanese colony, the Japanese really set up a really good infrastructure, and I think that was a lot of what made them so powerful in the 70s or 80s when they were like one of the four tiger. I don't remember if they're one of the four tigers or not, but one of the one of the most booming economies in
East
Asia.
Asian tiger economies, yeah.
Right. However, I think nowadays, they're kind of in a economic malaise, and they're just constantly worried about the threat from their much larger and much more rapidly expanding neighbor. So I just get the feeling, even when I lived there in 2013, and I think probably even more so now, that Taiwanese people are just not that secure about their future.
I've never actually lived in Taiwan. Comparing the two, I would say from what I've seen in pictures and videos of Taiwan, they seem a lot more Chinese. A lot more Chinese history is preserved there. And yeah, it's a lot easier to travel to. I noticed a lot of the music in mainland China comes from Taiwan also. So there's a lot more freedom and a lot more creativity from there than the mainland.
You mean they're more Chinese than the mainland Chinese?
It really feels like that when I look at the pictures and videos, because Taiwan has a lot of really well-preserved Chinese history. And then, living in Beijing, the communists bulldozed a lot of the Chinese history and then attempted to rebuild it out of concrete somewhere else. And you got all these crappy buildings that are fake Chinese in China.
Yeah, I think that gets to a really interesting question of what is China, because even the claim of 3,000 years of history, you've had a single country that has not been a single country at many points, has been, warring kingdoms. As you know, I think we've talked about it before, most, Chinese view themselves as Han Chinese, but that's also kind of a, not a misnomer, but a lot of Chinese aren't, even close to 100% Han Chinese. So it's just the general question of what makes something Chinese. And it's hard to say whether Taiwan is more Chinese or whether the idea of what is Chinese has shifted.
Yeah, I used to like to make this analogy when I was teaching Chinese students, like Chinese college kids, that let's say Europe under the Roman Empire, let's say the Roman Empire just grew bigger and it never collapsed, and then that turned into a nation state called Europe. That's what China would essentially be like. It's all these different provinces, different languages, culture's a bit different north to south. So that's kind of what China is.
That's right, but there is that gradual unifying tendency. Like, for example, you mentioned the languages. One of the saddest things for me living in China and learning more about the Chinese language has been watching the patterns in terms of dialects that are just kind of inevitably being crushed by Mandarin. Now, Mandarin's amazing in terms of what it enables, because it enables people from all, I guess with your analogy, it'd be like if everyone learned to speak Latin, the entire Roman Empire could all communicate with each other, which is great. But you also have all these, places like Guangdong, for example, that have their own language, Cantonese, which is just being totally lost because it's not economically advantageous to speak Cantonese. It's economically advantageous to speak standard Mandarin. And so, and this is not something new. This is something that has occurred through Chinese history, is that the Chinese state conquers militarily, but it also, conquers culturally by sort of forcing everybody to unify and become this monolith.
Yeah, and it's not like it's just dying out because Mandarin is better for business. It's like there's actually legal things going on there, right? Like you can't have dialects on television, right? It has to be Mandarin.
And in schools, I think is the biggest thing, that teachers are not allowed to teach in their local language. If you're a teacher, you have to teach in Mandarin. That means that kids in school are speaking Mandarin. No matter what they speak with their parents, if they're speaking Mandarin with their friends, that's what they're going to come to think of as their native language.
Cool. I feel like a lot of that's just civilizational advancement in general.
Yeah, I've not done the show with two guests at the same time, so I'm trying to optimize this. Who talks next? We're all kind of politely waiting who's going to go, and then there's a little delay, and then I cut you off, and it's,
We could launch into International Panda, and then Dan could talk about his Douyin.
Yeah, so let's talk about what brought you guys to China, and what did you do there, Greyson, when you went over? You worked at a company called International Panda. How about you get into that then?
Okay, it's a bit more complicated than that. I first went over to teach English, like Dan was saying. Most people get to China teaching English, but that was a terrible experience. I'm not going to lie, it was terrible. I love the children, it was great, but the company sucked. So I started looking for a job in the next couple of months, and I got hired at this Chinese technology company. It's kind of like ByteDance, but much smaller. I got hired at Locojoy, and I started doing overseas marketing there. I did some other stuff. I helped design some of the games. I communicated with the customers. I did a lot of cool stuff there because it wasn't just marketing. But I also had a lot of free time. And to explain that, Chinese expect you to be at work 10 to 12 hours a day, especially if you work an office job. So a lot of the times I'd have my work done. I'd have everything planned out, and I'm just hanging out. I figured I'm just going to start International Panda. I have this debate group running really well, and I'm going to start writing about observations I make in China. And one thing led to another. I just wrote about simple stuff, food in China. You go to a Chinese restaurant, and they give you this really hot water and these really tiny glasses, and you're sitting there, and you have your little teeny tiny glass of really hot water, and your mouth is getting dry, and you don't want to eat the food yet. And then by the time it's cool enough, you take a little drink, you're even more thirsty than before. And it's this endless repeating process. And everyone thought that was really funny because you go to a Chinese restaurant, they give you tiny cups of hot water. And then
You're writing articles on WeChat, right?
Yeah, it was an official WeChat account, International Panda. So when it got shared to people, it was like this, it looked like CNN, but on WeChat. This is an official account.
Yeah, so WeChat official accounts, the way they work, it's not like a Twitter account where you just tweet out things. It's more like you're broadcasting blog content, and it kind of goes directly to people in their message, like inbox stream, so it's a lot different from social media elsewhere.
It's kind of like a Facebook page, I would say, where you can have
kind of.
Yeah,
you can have followers. It's just like a long list of articles that you write, and once you get your account going, and then you have this history to look back upon.
Yeah, it's more like
so
a blog.
I got a little bit infamous with my International Panda because I started writing about Chinese relationships, like the Chinese wife is best wife. That was the first viral article I wrote. And I took all these, some people took it seriously. It was a satire. I took all these stereotypes of what the Chinese think is the best wife, and I put them together into one woman, and I wrote a satire article about it. And some people got really mad. They're like, Chinese women are not like this. And then other Chinese women are thinking, this is such a good article. So true. And it was just really funny. And it caught on. It got me a lot of subscribers for it.
Well, how do you really feel? Are you married to a Chinese woman?
I'm going to discuss that with you after the show.
Okay.
But like all good satire, it had a lot of true-to-life elements, right?
Oh, yeah, because I took a lot of stereotypes, and the satire part was I took little bits of everything, combined it into one person. Like, no one person embodies all these traits, but individually, people embody a little bit of each one. So I went on, I made a sequel to it called Your Chinese Girlfriend Will Kill You, where I did the exact opposite, and I took all these bad stereotype traits that non-Chinese expats in China would talk about their Chinese girlfriends, and I combined them all into this one horrible girlfriend. All these different things of how they control you, they take all your money, they try to get you to spend all of your money on their family, they dress you up, and I can't remember, there's a couple other things, but it was just a really funny article because it was mostly satire, and it took individual traits and combined them all into one person, which made it pretty funny. And I had a couple people, they messaged me on it. A lot of people were upset, a lot of people thought it was funny, but some people messaged me on it and they said, this is very true. I wish I would have wrote this article. And these are Chinese people, and I just thought it was so funny that these Chinese girls are saying this is 100% true. Chinese girlfriends treat their foreign boyfriends like crap. And it's very interesting being on the other side.
I think just a lot of these guys are, they let their wife or girlfriend walk all over them, so they got no balls. So I know plenty of guys who have great spouses, significant others in China who don't have these problems. But I know a lot more who do have these problems, I would say.
Yeah, Chinese women really like a strong man. I've noticed they really like, if you don't take charge, they will take charge. So they really like it if you're out there, you're working hard, you're taking care of the family, just not putting her in her place, but fulfilling your role.
Yeah, traditional roles.
Yeah.
Dan, are you
Do you,
married or girlfriend or anything like that?
I am. Chinese woman. Definitely can corroborate what Grayson was just saying. I think, yeah, I mean, part of it, well, I mean, I agree that there's a lot of traditional expectations for a husband compared to in the US, where who knows what the expectations are. But in China, it's very clear. I mean, I think partly it's just the economic structure of the society that if you marry somebody, you're expected to buy a house, buy a car, all this stuff. Now, of course, the requirements for foreigners might not be as stringent as they are for Chinese guys, but still, like that's who you're competing against, and that's kind of the level of expectations that's being set for you.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of look on the other side, a lot of Chinese women, if they are dating a foreigner, there's this insecurity that they may just go back home. And this woman wants to get married, they want to have kids, they have, obligations for their family. Their family expects to, pass on the name, they want a grandchild. So if you're with this foreigner who's maybe not so serious and they just leave you and you're 32 and now you got to find a new husband, it could really hurt your chances in China. So, oftentimes they expect this guy to give a bunch of money to the family almost as like a deposit, like you're going to stay here and you're going to take care of us and you're not going to run off back to the US or wherever.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, certainly there are women in China who are more westernized and have, don't have those expectations, but for the majority of Chinese women, that's going to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a professor. First time I went to China was an overseas study abroad trip, and I had a professor, and he told the whole class basically, if you get a Chinese girlfriend, they're going to expect to get married, and if you have sex with them, they are going to definitely expect it, and you're going to have some major problems. And I noticed that when I worked in China, that was very, very much true. Chinese don't consider dating as a person-to-person jumping around kind of thing. They like, if you start dating, this is the preliminary steps to getting married. It's not just having fun. This is a serious thing that we're doing.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much the case everywhere, but things liberalized obviously in the West where it didn't become the case there.
Chairman Mao said that any dating which does not have marriage as its purpose is shuai liu mang. I don't know how to translate that. Playing at gamesters or something like that.
It's like you're
some
a deadbeat.
red book wisdom.
You're a degenerate.
Degeneracy, exactly. That's a great translation. Yes.
Yeah, Mao Zedong's an interesting character, especially in Chinese history. A lot of Chinese, you can talk about Mao in China, I mean, within the limits, of course. And a lot of Chinese, they know what Mao did, and a lot of them have surviving family members. This Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward are within living memory. So a lot of Chinese grandparents experienced this. So this idea that everybody doesn't know about what Mao did in China with the, can I say it? I mean, the mass murder, the starvations, all of the political stuff going on. Chinese do know about that. A lot of Chinese are knowledgeable about specifics. And his history, what I was talking about, is so complicated because when he did come into power, he's fixed a lot of stuff that were leftovers from the Republican era. That when I read a book called Ways That Are Dark, it's about an American who goes over to China, I think in 1910 or something, and he talks about the Republican era of China. It really seems like China was a lot worse off before Mao, if anybody could actually believe that. It was really, really bad.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole century of humiliation is not like just propaganda. I mean, it really did go from, up here to down here. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan, can you explain what that is? The century of humiliation.
Well, I'm not an expert in Chinese history. At least I wouldn't consider myself one. But basically, it's well, China has, as you will hear 1,000 times over, if you go to China, China has the longest uninterrupted history of any civilization on Earth. 3,000 years of uninterrupted history, and they had always considered them. I mean, the name China literally is the Middle Kingdom, 中国, Middle Kingdom. They considered themselves the center of the world, and then they kind of had a very rude awakening in I guess it was the early 1900s during the Qing Dynasty, where the Qing Dynasty was really weak, and Europeans with, modern guns and modern warfare techniques just basically came in and raped and pillaged China. China had wanted to cut itself off from the rest of the world, but the Europeans forced them to open themselves up and agree to all these like unequal trading concessions and such. And so the Chinese considered this century to be a century of humiliation, where like China had kind of lost its rightful place as the leader of the world and been humiliated by Western powers, mostly European powers, but also the US as well. And I think that's really important for the Chinese mindset, the idea that they're coming back now in the 20th and now the 21st century, coming back from the century of humiliation to reclaim their rightful place.
Yeah, that's kind of where Hong Kong comes from too, is during the century of humiliation. When the British, they carved it out as their own territory to ship in opium and take out silver, they needed a secure port, and they needed to have it legalized for the other European powers not to interfere. So that's where Hong Kong comes from.
Right.
Yeah, this is an unpopular opinion, especially here in America, and I understand why as America first, having Hong Kong separate would make China weaker, and it'd be better for America because we can manipulate their currency through that city-state. But for China, Hong Kong definitely does belong to China historically, and it should belong to China culturally as well. So I don't support any of the Hong Kong protests that are happening, and that's an unpopular opinion here in America, and I don't support having an independent Hong Kong. I think it should be part of China, and the only reason it exists is because of the century of humiliation.
So Greyson, put yourselves in a Hong Konger's shoes, and you're in Hong Kong, you grew up there, you enjoy freedom of speech and open internet, and let's say the commies are coming in to take all that away. How would you're just gonna be like, well, we're part of China, I guess we'll just suck it up and get on the VPN like all the foreigners do?
I really feel like the Hong Kong people, they have this individual idea about themselves, and they don't have a lot of nationalism or a lot of national pride. They have city-state pride, or pride in their city. But when you come down to the superpowers, and this is why I like being an American, because we are the number one superpower on the planet. And if we have people trying to secede, I think that we should fight wars to keep them in, because an America together is a stronger America. So I would say it's really difficult for me to comprehend what a Hong Kong person is thinking with that, because I would be very much on the side of having a very strong national identity. And if that means being part of China, and if I was a Chinese person, I would want to be very strong nationalist for my country.
Would you extend the same logic to Taiwan?
Definitely. I feel mainland China and Taiwan are going to eventually reconcile the differences peacefully. I don't like any of the saber rattling that happens over there. I don't think it's constructive to have mainland Chinese officials in high positions talking about war with Taiwan. I really feel like, because Taiwan is a democracy or a republic, however you want to describe it, democratic republic, China just needs to continue looking at the long game, and eventually Taiwan will vote themselves in to the mainland.
Yeah, we'll see about that. They're not very popular over there, the Communist Party in Taiwan.
But they do have a lot of Chinese loyalists, a lot of mainland loyalists over there in Taiwan that have the ability to vote.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be messy. I mean, I think China's probably going to just invade in this decade. I would say it was probably going to happen.
I'm not going to say it won't happen. I'm hoping it doesn't.
But you would say if China invades, the U.S. should just let it.
Oh, no, I didn't say that. Okay, I'm very much America first. I'm saying from a Chinese perspective, okay? That was before. I just want to clarify that. Okay. No, as an American, in all reality, if China does, this is why I don't want China to invade Taiwan. If China does start a kinetic conflict with Taiwan in some way, America does need to step in. They are an ally, and they're a very important ally. That's kind of a stepping stone into the rest of Southeast Asian Pacific Islands.
It's very interesting to hear you voice those two perspectives, simultaneously or one after the other. And
Well, the first part was from a Chinese person's perspective, okay?
Right.
'Cause I'm very much a nationalist, and if I was Chinese anywhere in China, I would want to have a unified country.
Right, but then it's not. De facto, Taiwan is its own country, so you're not talking about nationalism. Really, you're talking about like a somewhat broader concept of Chinese. What would you call it? Race or?
I wouldn't call Taiwan its own country because a lot of Taiwan, even though they have their own passports and currency, it's extremely reliant on the mainland for pretty much everything.
But that's not really the criterion for, like, I don't know, let's say we found that, I don't know if this is true or not, but if Ireland is very dependent on Britain, that wouldn't make it part of Britain.
It makes it part of the UK.
But that's not a country.
The United Kingdom? Okay, I'm getting into semantics here.
Yeah, well, I mean Ireland, not Northern Ireland. Right? Ireland is definitely its own country, regardless of how reliant it is on trade with.
Yeah, they didn't.
Ireland is not part of the UK, so
they didn't get on the Brexit action.
Okay, I'm interested to see how that works out because we can talk about it, but in reality, I wonder how that looks. Because everyone's talking about there's going to be a hard border, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think they're gonna keep doing what they're doing.
Well, jumping back to Taiwan, I did a lot of business over there when I lived in Shanghai, and I'd fly over there like probably once a month, and sometimes I'd bring a team member over, like another foreigner, like a European or something, and I didn't realize how much people didn't know about this Taiwan-China conflict, you could say, because they didn't even know they had to change money. They're like, wait, I can't use RMB there? What are you talking about? Isn't it part of China? I'm like, no, they have their own currency. You're going to have to go through immigration when we get there. It's like going to another country.
Yeah, it's always amazing to me when Chinese people are so steadfast that Taiwan is part of China. I mean, I get it. It's the government's rhetoric, but just from having lived there, it just really doesn't feel like they don't think of themselves as part of the People's Republic of China, even though they are certainly part of China in terms of its history and heritage.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of them would say they're Chinese, and that's the Chinese identity aspect of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Nate, I don't know, your listeners might be familiar with this already, but I would be curious to hear what your story with China was.
Yeah, so I moved over in 2008. And before that, I'd been studying Chinese in college. So I started college in 2004. I was at a super liberal arts, one of the most liberal colleges in America. They didn't even have grades. but I was really interested in going to China and working there when I finished college. So I worked my ass off in college. I learned Chinese. I went over there to study every summer. I went to Anhui one summer. I went to Chengdu another summer where I met my now wife. And then I went to Beijing for like a whole spring semester. And then after college, got an English teaching job in China in a city called Nanchang, Jiangxi province. And then after I got kind of tired of teaching, I wanted to be more career-focused, career-minded. I got into marketing in Shanghai in 2012, and the rest is history. So I'm in marketing now still, but in Texas, and I left China this year.
For good?
Or, sorry, 2020, last year. Yeah, I would say for good. I mean, I created this show almost to keep this connection to that expat lifestyle, because I was also like kind of born into this lifestyle. My dad moved to Taiwan and brought the whole family in the 90s, in 1994. So I lived there for 3 years when I was in elementary school, went to Taipei American School, and it's definitely a lot different from China. It was, it's very Chinese. We talked about how the culture is kind of preserved, and a lot of that's due to, after World War II, the nationalists, this Kuomintang that Greyson was talking about, they basically got a bunch of the treasures of China, cultural treasures, and just brought them over to Taiwan. And they got all the good chefs. So all the people who are preserving Chinese cuisine and art and history, all that stuff was in Taiwan, because it was getting blown to bits during the Cultural Revolution in the mainland.
Right. you're done with China, at least for this point in your life.
I don't want to live there anymore. I mean, dude, I loved living there. It was a great time, but I have a son. The pollution is just too nasty, and there are days when we just wouldn't want to take him outside. Like, oh, we're not going to the park today. The AQI is like 200, so I just don't like that. I want clean air. I want more space. I want more peace and quiet. So the U.S. is really good for all those things, and I'm American, so that kind of helps.
Right.
Dan, this year, 2020, I've been hearing reports that China doesn't have a lot of pollution in Beijing. How do you feel that this year compares to previous years, pollution-wise?
Yeah, it's getting better gradually. I mean, I think I came in 2012, and I remember 2013 being like the worst possible winter, where it was just, you'd have, a whole week that was, I guess people aren't familiar with the scale, but the AQI scale goes up to 500, right? And it was designed, to measure how bad the air is. I think anything above 100, you're recommended to stay inside, and anything above 300 is just like toxic. And there's like a whole week where it was literally off the charts. It was above 500, where there's no longer a number to measure it, and people were just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, back then Chinese people didn't really understand it, but I was just kind of like sitting in my home with the air purifier on full blast and praying for the end.
Yeah, and I was in Shanghai.
So it's gotten a lot better since then.
I was in Shanghai in that winter 2013. It was so bad there too. I remember it vividly because I'd be out partying or something, and you just look out at the sky and it's brown, and it's nighttime, but you still see the brown. It was I've never seen anything like it.
But yeah, definitely seen some improvement.
I think 2020 has probably been the best year yet, in my opinion, from what my Chinese friends are telling me.
COVID was
they've had a lot of blue sky days. Well, the Chinese account blue sky days because they have so much pollution, and 2020 has had quite a few of them. You checking if it's blue out there right now?
Yeah, unfortunately it's not. Today's a gray day, unfortunately.
And sometimes when you look up, you see blue, but then you look straight ahead at the horizon, and it's like white.
Yeah. It's if people have not been to China, it's a really difficult concept to comprehend, just going out and in this environment where it's the middle of the day and it's just overcast, but it's not from mist or anything like that. It's gray and brown pollution.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, the people that just were totally ignorant about it. They thought it was fog. Like, you'd just be wearing your mask because the pollution was at 500, and people would be like, and talk to your Chinese friend, and they're like, oh, 今天的那个雾很严重. It's really misty, foggy day today. And you're just like, no, that's not mist. It's not good for you. You should be wearing a mask too, especially for the kids. Like, you see the kids with, this hacking cough. They sound like they're, like, you see these, 8-year-old boys who sound like they're 80-year-old men. Just, Anyway, but I think the education has improved. The government has stopped resisting, actually monitoring the pollution levels and have kind of embraced it. It's part of all the, Baidu map or whatever. And also the actual situation has improved since then.
Yeah, it's like the Beijing cough. It took me about 3 months to get it. But you're living in such a polluted environment, everybody gets it, this buildup of fluid in your lungs. And anybody who lives in China for an extended amount of time, and I'm not talking about tourists who go there for a week or a month, I'm talking about, a year at least, you notice that everybody is doing this coughing and spitting thing, and just a lot of people spitting on the street.
Yeah.
So what was it that brought you guys over to Beijing in the first place? Like, why did you choose this place?
You first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I came over for work, and my study abroad program was in Beijing. So I figured, I already know the city pretty well. I spent a few years, but I know people who live there. And when I lived in Holland, I also knew a bunch of Chinese there, some of them from Beijing. So it was actually a really easy city for me to move to because I already knew people there.
Nice.
So that's why I picked Beijing.
For me, it was language. I Nate, you mentioned you studied Chinese in college. I studied, I studied 1 year in high school of Chinese, and then, that, as you guys know, if you learn a language in high school, you don't really learn that much. So I started studying it again in college. I had a lot of international student friends from China in college. So I started studying with them, and then found myself more interested in learning Chinese than in the college courses I was taking. So I took a gap year in 2012. And I came to Beijing as an au pair, which has connotations of kind of, cleaning up diapers and stuff, but this is like a language au pair program. So basically I was like a glorified live-in English teacher for this, super rich Chinese family. And kind of like Grayson was saying, like not because I already knew people here, but because of that homestay thing, it was a super easy transition. Like everything was taken care of, and I was just having fun every day, like going out and learning Chinese. I wanted to live in Beijing because that's the most standard, or more or less the most standard pronunciation of Chinese. So I was just learning Chinese every day, and really enjoying the food and the culture. And after I graduated from college, I met my wife back in 2012, and we kept in touch when I went back to the U.S. for college. And after I graduated college, I came back and pretty much been here ever since.
Cool.
That's kind of a special English teaching role. Like usually the English teachers who go over, a lot of them work at universities, and they teach these huge classrooms of like 40 kids. So you're actually like a private family teacher staying there.
That's right. And it was, I think, I couldn't recommend this more if anyone wants to go to China. I mean, you have to be, like, I would say at this point, I'm probably too old to do it, but if you're 20 something and you want to go to China, look up, language au pair, language homestay or something, because yeah, you're living with a Chinese family, and it's like, I don't know, for me, it has this like sentimental aspect of like, that was like when I was a kid in China. So, I was living with the family and doing everything they did, and you feel like you're just almost part of the family.
That's very cool, actually.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
What kind of, when you were teaching, Grayson, what kind of school was it? What kind of classrooms did you deal with?
It was one of those private companies that goes into China, so everything's really top notch. It wasn't like the like these other public school nightmare, or these English teacher nightmare that they have going on. So I did have that, and class sizes were about 10 to 12, so it's a lot easier to talk with students and a lot easier to plan. I just didn't enjoy the whole teaching thing, like just teaching in general.
I think teaching, it doesn't get enough credit for how difficult it is and how much energy it requires. You're up there performing, and in this day and age, everybody's got a phone, and you're competing for attention from like 40 kids who all have phones in a classroom. How can you be more entertaining than every one of their phones and get everybody engaged? If you care, if you actually want to make a difference in the classroom, you could also just not care. I knew plenty of guys who didn't give a shit, would go in, they'd show a movie, they'd be hungover, and like would take a nap, and that was their class.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'm teaching at an international school now, and it's pretty exhausting. Well, as Grayson knows, I used to work at a Chinese real estate company, and you were talking about as you said, they expect you to work 10 hours a day and all this kind of stuff. And it's very tough. But on the other hand, like if you're working at a company like that, you are still doing a desk job, and you can just sit at your desk and take the time you need to get stuff done. And then when you're done for the day, you can just do whatever you want. Whereas, now I have 5 classes a day, and I'm, as you said, Nate, I'm performing, like in the classroom, performing, trying to get these kids to pay attention to me. So I would say it's not any easier than the real estate job.
Do you do jiu-jitsu
now, or back when I was working in real estate?
Back in real estate.
No, I was lucky that I didn't have to work on the weekends. You should explain that though for the audience.
Oh, so 996 jiu-jitsu what is it? 9 hours on, 9 hours off? How they
Nine,
two
No,
nine
nights?
to
it's
nine.
9 a.m. to
Okay,
9
nine
p.m.
nine to
6 days a
nine,
week.
6 days a week. That's what Chinese were talking about. Should be the normal work week, and a
It's
lot of
a
companies.
72-hour work week.
Yes, a lot of companies tried implementing it on a serious note because what the Chinese already have an official 40-hour work week, and that's the standard. But they also have this culture where you're expected to come early and stay late. So you could work your 40 hours, but if you're not coming early and staying late, you're going to look lazy and they're probably going to let you go for somebody who does want to work for free basically. Go over their 40 hours and put in like 60, 70 hours a week.
I would
Yeah.
say a lot of those people, though, are maybe they are staying late, maybe they are coming in early, but they're not necessarily that productive during that
Oh no, no,
12-hour
they're not.
workday.
That's true. I think I don't know. I mean, I think I have a hard time calling them. I would say Chinese people are definitely not lazy. Like I find Americans to be pretty lazy in terms of if you look at the average person our age, their work
Oh,
ethic.
in general, yes. I would say that in the companies, though, because
Yes,
they're at work so often, they often find things to do that are not work, like they're lounging around or they're having fun, and it
for
makes
sure.
sense because they're there so often. But
Yes,
I think that's what Nate was talking about.
yep,
No, I'm
for
talking
sure.
about naps. I'm talking about screwing off, doing nothing. Because I mean, I worked in an office environment. People definitely didn't come early. People actually came late. It was, I mean, it's advertising and marketing. It's kind of how it is often, but they stay late. But I would just, I'd look at the productivity of a lot of people, and these weren't people on my team, so I didn't have much influence on them. But it was a lot of laziness, just straight up. But I mean, that could be generational. It was mostly young people and like fresh out of college. You know, maybe they just didn't have that work ethic that maybe a previous generation has.
Oh yeah, there's definitely this disconnect in Chinese culture between traditional Chinese and the young generation. I think Dan knows a lot about it as well. That these younger Chinese, they've grown up in a China which has had increasing freedoms, increasing wealth, and they don't know about what their parents experienced, and they don't know what their grandparents experienced. So they kind of have this more lazy. It's like a lazy attitude of where they expect everything to just be given to them in a way, kind of like Americans.
Yeah, I think to some degree, but there is also a huge amount of pressure on them. As I was saying earlier, if you want to get married, you need to have a house, you need to have an apartment. I mean, you have to have a car, you need to have an apartment. So you see both sides.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's just,
That's the man side though.
Yes,
Yeah.
but a lot of
mostly.
pressure for women too to get married at that ripe young age and pop out that kid.
That's right.
And don't you dare be gay.
Yeah, yeah. I like that about China, how they're so traditionalist with the family, and family is so important to them. And it's not that they don't like homosexuals; they just don't want homosexuals in their family because that means they're not going to get children out of them. And it's a lot of families to it's just East Asian culture in general is having children is your purpose in life. You can be great and achieve at your company, and you could be an artist or whatever you want. But if you're not having children to pass on to become a parent and a grandparent, then you're not really fulfilling your obligation as a Chinese or as a Japanese or in an East Asian really.
So if you guys could give a quick summary, let's say you're explaining what China's like to somebody who's never been, and maybe this person has preconceived notions of China. Do you have like a special way of describing China, like in your own words, to somebody who's has no idea what's going on over there?
It's a tough one. You go first.
Oh, yeah, it is a tough one. Thanks for putting me on the spot. First and foremost, I would describe it as polluted and dirty, and it's one of those experiences that you're not really going to understand or like unless you're there for pretty much 2 years at a minimum, because there's just so much in China and it's so foreign, especially culturally. So I would describe China as a land of extremes and hypocritical stuff, because you're going to love it and you're going to hate it. And some days it's going to be amazing, and other days it's going to be terrible and polluted. So you got to be ready for that. It's just going to be extremely hot and extremely cold, and you're not going to get a lot of stuff in the middle.
I think that's a very good explanation.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that, but I would probably put a more optimistic spin on it. I mean, I think if you're somebody who likes having your worldview challenged and likes, having, well, as Greyson said, having experiences that it's going to take you years to really process. But if you're someone who views that kind of, I mean, it's a challenge, I would say. If you're someone who views that kind of challenge as a good thing, then I think you'll probably do well here. It's like you're coming to, as I said before, this is, a culture that has existed so long, and for most of its history is totally separate from the West. And you're just going to come to this place where, like, the deeper you go, the more you realize that everything is upside down from what you're expected to, from what you're used to and what you're expecting. And if you enjoy, trying to wrap your head around why people act this way that seems crazy to you, then I think you'll have a good time here.
I want to touch on that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
That China, it breaks a lot of people, and Dan's met some of them. If you're not really sure who you are as a person, and you're not ready to have your preconceived notions challenged, then China's really going to do a number on you as a person. It's not an easy place to live. It's a very personal challenge.
For sure.
Yeah, especially if you're in a city that's not Beijing, Shanghai. Like when I lived in Nanchang, I would see a lot of foreigners break. They'd come in first year and they'd be out sometimes sooner than after like the full year contract, which they had with the school. I've seen plenty of people bail after the first semester. We go on Chinese New Year holiday and they just disappear. They don't come back. I've seen a few literal mental breakdowns. There used to be this dude named Don. He was a guy from the Netherlands, and he just went totally crazy. Like, my friend who lived above him in our apartment complex said he would hear like screaming at 3 a.m. It's like, "Who are you? What the fuck is that? I see you looking at me!" Like, you just this hysterical stuff. And then he'd knock on his door, and then he'd say, "Hey, what's wrong?" And then the guy would be like sleepwalking or something. He'd be like looking at him with these like glazed over eyes and like, like really confused. It was really bizarre. And then he started insulting the students. He had really creative insults. He's like, "You all are a bunch of dead animals in human skin." Like, he would say really weird shit like that to the students. He was not very popular. And then he eventually was like on the streets, and he lost his passport, and the school had already fired him. And the last I heard about him, some police officer took him into his house to take care of him. And then after that, I have no idea. He might be dead. Who knows?
It's a sad story.
We did raid his apartment after he left, though. And he left a bunch of stuff there. And I got a bunch of documents that he had just left in a binder. And it was all these communications with, those ads online that are like, hot women in your area. He was in touch with a bunch of hot women in his area, but they were mostly saying they're in the U.S. or in Europe or some of them in Africa. And he would write these like 3-page emails to them, like, I will fly you out to the Nanchang International Airport, and you can stay with me in my city apartment. He was like trying to glam it up a bit. And he would just get really angry in every follow-up email. He's like, "Why aren't you coming? Why are you asking me to send you money? That's what the last one did, and she ripped me off." So he had this like hope in his heart that one of these were a real woman who wanted to spend time with him.
Wow.
So I guess I'm just making fun of a mentally disabled guy. We should probably move on. This guy obviously had a lot of problems.
In China, actually, being a white guy in China, and you said he was Dutch, right? So he's probably white.
He was what?
It's really easy to attract women here, and not just Chinese women, because there are foreigners, but most of them Chinese, obviously. But it's like coming here to China. If you're a 6 out of 10, you immediately become an 11 out of 10. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. We're used to thinking of America as the land of the free, but there is a lot of ways where, just culturally, I think you feel more free in China because you like, as you said, in terms of the dating pool, in terms of jobs, it's just you're so enabled here. Like people, want you to work for them, they want you to date them, etc. That it gives you a lot of freedom, and of course, as Nate was saying, if you have mental tendencies, then those are going to be exacerbated by that.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet a bunch of people find out they have some kind of mental illness after they go to China. Like, they find out they're bipolar or something.
A lot of people become alcoholics there too. So I notice a lot of people, they start out and they're normal functioning human beings, and then they start drinking to cope with the high stress environment of China, and then they don't find a healthy outlet for all the stress. They just become functioning alcoholics until they can't function anymore.
Yeah, because one of the biggest challenges is just not speaking Chinese. Because I spoke it, and it made life so much easier. And it's like you're able to see the real picture in China. And if you don't speak Chinese, you're like, it's like you only have one eye or something. You can't see the whole picture. And every little thing in the daily routine is going to be a lot harder, because maybe your air conditioner breaks. Maybe the neighbor's complaining that your air conditioner is dripping water on their hanging laundry, and they're yelling at you, or you need a repairman, or you need just all these little basic things. And if you can't speak Chinese, it's going to be hell.
I definitely agree with that. I think, if I hadn't had the constant mission of learning Chinese to keep me here, I probably would have gotten discouraged and headed back. But it is, like a never-ending mission. As I was saying earlier to Greyson before the show started, I've never read a book in Chinese. I've been studying it for 10 years, still haven't read a book. So I no matter how much time you put into it, there will always be new levels. And it's if you don't make that part of your life here, then you're probably just going to get frustrated.
I have some fun experiences about getting drunk in China.
Let's hear it, man.
So towards the end of my time in China, I could feel it coming on with my company. They were getting rid of all the foreigners as the last foreigner there at my company, and the Trump tariffs are really doing a number on Chinese businesses, Chinese companies, especially the tech industry, because everyone was afraid of what's going on with TikTok in China is going to happen to their Chinese company if they're in the tech industry. So a lot of stuff was happening outside my control. And I already planned on going back to CPAC, so it turned into this end party for the last couple of months of where I just show up to work and hang out and do what I was supposed to do, but nothing extra. Because I knew what they were planning. They're trying to get rid of me. I was already training my replacement. And I'd go out on the weekends and I'd just get super smashed and ride my bicycle around. I'd get one of those rent-a-bikes. And then I'd yell at people in Chinese. I'd be like, 中国共产党新汉说了，他们要谋杀你. And people would be like, oh my God, what's this guy saying to me?
So can you translate that?
The CCP is cruel and merciless and they want to murder you. And I just get drunk and just yell different stuff at Chinese people at night while riding my bike like this.
So you're able to do that in Beijing.
A bunch of anti-CCP stuff. And I never got in trouble. That was another thing. And maybe I'm lucky. I probably mostly lucky.
Yeah, I would say so.
But those are fun times, because sometimes people, they're just like hearing a swear word for the first time in their life. They want to take it home with them and find a way to use it.
Did you hear that a lot?
The llama?
Holy.
Yeah, it's Halima.
Well, anyways, I'm just playing with the soundboard here. So,
yeah, those are a bunch of Chinese swear words for the people who can't understand.
Yeah, and it's variations of saying fuck your mom, but it's like they have a lot of different ways to say that one insult, and that's pretty much the insult.
Yeah, Nimada.
True.
All right, so
Directly, yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was gonna say directly translating Chinese swear words, it comes out kind of funny, like grass, mud, horse, and your mom.
Yeah. And some of it's like it's fuck your mom, but it's like two different ways of saying that, but they mash them up together. So it sounds really silly when you translate it to English.
You can also say you, his mothers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ni mother.
Yeah. Or ni tamada. You, his mothers. It's funny when you think about it.
Yeah, it's odd. So Beijing, we talked about how you all would describe China to outsiders. How about Beijing, and how would you compare Beijing to other cities in China?
I've never lived anywhere else. I don't have, a basis for comparison for living elsewhere. But, I certainly visited lots of cities. I think, Beijing has a reputation of being the most, culturally significant. It's got a lot of museums, all that kind of stuff. And I like being here because it doesn't feel Americanized. Like, for example, if you want to go to Shanghai, it's going to be a lot easier to live there because you have westernized food, people might speak better English, all that kind of stuff. But Beijing is kind of like the proud, people who are sticking to what's Chinese. Chinese is the best, and they've been doing that for thousands of years, and they're going to keep on doing that.
Yeah. I've never lived in any other cities either. I've traveled a lot of cities. I would say that Beijing is definitely a first-tier city. If you travel outside the first-tier cities, you know what I'm talking about, where roads are not exactly paved very well. The food that you get is really suspect. So living in Beijing, I'd describe it as being a first-tier city. It's kind of like that anime Akira, where they live in the megatropolis, and it's like they have the normal skyscrapers, and then they have like the extra large skyscrapers, and that's kind of what living in Beijing is like. It's just an endless megatropolis.
All right, and then I asked you guys before the show how many countries you've lived in, and how about we go with you, Greyson? Can you just name them all?
Well, lived in, that'd be just China, Holland, and America. I've traveled to a bunch more, but lived in is just those three.
Okay.
I got two of those.
So you got 2 Mr. Worldwides for living in 2 foreign countries. And how about you, Dan?
Well, now that we've talked through the subject, I'm going to claim 2 as well: China and Taiwan.
Okay.
Nice.
And we have to play this. I don't make the rules. I just have to follow the rules.
Maybe 1.5.
I think that counts.
See, you're
counts.
kind of on my side now with Taiwan being part of China half.
It's disputed.
All right, what would you guys say is like the weirdest thing you experienced overseas or in China?
I'll go first. Dan's thinking, I can tell. So I'm on the subway. No, I'm not going to talk about that story because I have a weirder one. I'm in one of those shopping malls where they have like 8 floors, the mega shopping malls. And I'm with my girlfriend, and we're looking at trinkets. It's what do you call this? Like all those fun little doodads and gadgets. They have no real purpose, but it's like stuffed animals and toys and that kind of stuff. A doodad shop. And we're looking around at stuff, and she goes over. She's still next to me, so you can tell that we're together, and she's looking at stuff. And I feel somebody grab my hand from behind, and it's like a nice soft grasp, like my girlfriend would do. And then she just gently lets go. And I turn around and I look. It's this Chinese girl who held my hand on purpose, and then just kind of nonchalantly walks away. And I can see her, and I'm like, "What the heck's just happened?" This girl just really walk up and try to hold my hand a little bit, and then walk away like nothing happened. So I poke on my girlfriend's shoulders, like, did you just see that? She's like, see what? And she didn't even believe me when I told her. She's like, no, nobody would do that to you. So that's probably one of my weirdest experiences.
Huh.
Was it exciting? Did you
Yeah,
feel,
I have a few experiences about Chinese girls doing weird stuff. Another one on the subway. This is the probably the second one. Subways are so packed that you just can't help but rub against other people just because it's so packed. There's no room for you to go.
It's not because you're just a pervert.
Yeah, it's not like in Japan. Not like the Japanese. And every single stop, the subway has to put on the brakes, and everybody leans to one direction. And I'm like eight or nine stops away from where I have to get off. So the first time it happens, I just think, whatever, we're stopping. This girl leans into me. There's not enough room. And every single stop, she just leans into me more and more. And as closer we get to my stop, the more people are getting off. And I realize the last 2 or 3 stops, she's doing it on purpose, where there's enough room. She'll just lean her whole body into me every time the brakes go on, and just kind of like feel me up with her body. And it's pretty obvious because there weren't people on the subway at this point in time. So that was the second weirdest one.
Did you just ignore it? Or?
Oh yeah. I mean, I didn't not like it.
Maybe she was just cold.
Yeah, maybe she's just cold.
Dan, did you think of one?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced lots of weird, public behavior. Mostly it's just the people like, hello, like treating, it's like they're so excited to see a foreigner that they use the one word that they know of English. But I think probably the weirdest thing to me, the weirdest behavior is when you ask someone for directions and they have absolutely no idea, they just lie. So you're like, well, how do I go here? And they're like, oh, you want JBenzo. And then you take their advice and it turns out they're just totally lying, like, because it's, loss of face if you say, I don't know. So and of course the same thing happens with my students, where they feel it's embarrassing to admit to not knowing anything. But with directions, it's just so baffling. Like, you're just going to actually give someone the wrong directions rather than admit to having no idea. Of course, nowadays we don't really need directions. We can just use our phones, so it's less of an issue.
I've heard people having that in Japan too. The same thing, where people just don't want to give the wrong answer, or they don't want to give no answer, so they just give the wrong answer.
Right. Yeah.
Do you ever have secret pictures taken of you?
Yeah, and that's weird when that happens. You look up and you're like, did you really just take a picture of me?
And they try to do it in a really obvious way too. They're trying to be sneaky with their phone, and then they're kind of like putting it right here. Like, I know what you're doing.
I'm still holding
Just
and
ask
pointing
me.
it, but it's not right in front of my face, so he's
Exactly.
gonna have no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the weirdest thing you guys ate in China?
The weirdest thing that I ate?
Yeah.
Either pig brains or half a rabbit head.
Centipedes.
Centipedes.
Oh, you went to that place. I know what
Is
place
that
you're talking about.
Wang
Wang
Fujing.
Fujing.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's that thing. Every food travel show, if they go to China, they always go to that street. It's this like big shopping street in the middle of Beijing, and there's a little snack street there where they have like cockroaches, scorpions, centipedes, all sorts of weird stuff. But that's not really what people eat in China, right? That's like kind of a tourist trap, yeah?
That's a tourist trap, although actually, my wife's family, they eat the larvae. And those I cannot, like, the centipedes are not that bad. I was pleasantly surprised by it was just like pretty tasteless but crunchy, the centipede. Whereas the larvae are just like this soft, pulpy material that I cannot get
gross.
used to. But they actually do eat larvae. Yeah.
Yeah, they also just look really gross, those things.
Yeah, they look so gross.
Yeah, Chinese eat a lot of interesting stuff. I've had pig ears as well. That's another weird one. And pig ears are usually for dogs. Here in America, you eat dried pig ears, you give them to your dogs. So in China, they're like, you want to eat some pig ears? I'm thinking, why not?
feet are actually not bad if you get them done well. Pig feet.
I know those are very popular. I've never actually ate them because that's the one step I'm not going to take.
Hmm. And then the chicken claws, like again, if they're done well, they can be not bad.
I like the Hong Kong like dim sum style chicken feet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
those are good.
Yeah. Not like the white, like, tasteless / vinegar / spicy one, but the dim sum stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember like one of the first times I went out and partied at a nightclub in China. It was in Chengdu, and they gave us a bunch of drinks like whiskey and some mixers and a platter of fruit, and then like a bowl of chicken feet.
Very
It's like
Chinese.
It felt so glamorous, but there was this like weird veneer of something else there with those feet. All right, dead air. This is tricky with the two guests thing. It's hard to keep the conversation moving. Sometimes.
Well, I could keep talking. I do.
Yeah, keep talking.
I've been getting a lot better with my hour show, trying to hit an hour and going a little bit over. Because on D Live, the longer you talk on D Live, the more likely you are to get lemons. But with me, I just kind of monologue, and I'll end up dominating. So I need you guys to feel comfortable with interjecting if I talk a lot.
I'm very comfortable with interjecting.
What are lemons?
Lemons are the form of currency on D Live, and they can be exchanged for real money.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you can check out Expats On Air on DLive.tv. Smash that like button.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can see I have a DLive channel too. But unlike Greyson, I've actually not been live streaming, so I'll get there eventually. I wanted to do some of these shows pre-recorded. Greyson, you just jumped right into that, and you're quite good at the monologue thing. I've watched some of your streams.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it takes a lot of preparation. Actually, I've noticed for certain subjects like China, if I get on a big China rant, I could fill up an hour and a half because I know so much, and like a lot of it's related to politics for my show. But when it comes to other stuff, I need to plan out what I'm going to do and have transitions into it, especially when I'm doing something and need to change subjects, like we're talking about Mitch McConnell, and then I got to switch it up to be talking about something going on in the economy. It's like you got to have a transition in there. So it's the learning process. That's how I describe it. And I'd like to ask Dan about his Douyin, because 160,000 subscribers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a lot more than anything I've ever had in my life. What is it? Are you like super popular? Are you famous?
I got pretty popular. So my basic formula, my gimmick, I guess you could call it, is there's a ton of really bad English teaching content on Douyin. I mean, I'm sure you've come across, in person, like the really
like
bad
one?
Chinese English teachers.
Yeah.
Who have terrible pronunciation, and they really can't even speak English, and yet somehow they're teaching English. So these same people, of course, have found their way to Douyin and are making English teaching content, which basically what I did was I would use these other Douyin, not streamers, but Boju, I don't know what the word for uploaders.
Accounts, yeah.
Yeah, I would use their material to point out basically like errors you should avoid in speaking English. So yeah, I think I only had one video that really went viral. I got, I think, about 3.5 million views, and that was about is Chinese more difficult than English? People were really interested in the idea of whether English or Chinese was more difficult. But just kind of built up a fan base from that. The unfortunate thing is that you guys were talking about, DLive. You can stream on Douyin, but I don't have enough followers for that. You need 500,000 followers as a foreigner to be able to stream. For Chinese people, you can just do it immediately. For foreigners, they have a requirement of 500,000 fans to be able to stream. And that's the only way to make money. You're talking about lemons. You have the same thing on Douyin. People can send you gifts if you live stream. So yeah, that's my... Right now, I'm just too busy with teaching to do it. But my goal when I go back to Douyin is to get up to that 500,000 mark and then make money from it.
Dude, I bet if you just start kissing Communist Party ass, you'll get that 500K in that live stream capability.
Some people do that on Douyin. There's that one guy. what's his name? He's always saying,
that guy.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about. I forget.
I
his
know
name.
that guy. Yeah, I forget his name too.
Really annoying. So hopefully it can avoid taking that road.
Yeah,
So
don't
he's
kiss
this-
CCP butt. You don't have to demonize the CCP. Just be honest. I hate people who are foreigners and they're like, I love CCP.
They don't usually say CCP. It's more just like, I
The
love China
government.
so much. Like, it's so much better, you know, in every way.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
God, there's
Never
this guy
trust
on
a foreigner who
LinkedIn.
doesn't love their home nation.
There's
For
this
sure.
guy on LinkedIn who works at ByteDance, European guy, and he's always doing that, and he's always getting into arguments about Xinjiang with people, and he's like always saying like, hey, all they did was put 1 million people in camps. They didn't drone strike them. They weren't killing people like America. So that's like his whole thing about how China's so great is that they don't drone strike people, according to his knowledge at least. I mean, who knows how many people they're killing over there.
Well, this took a really dark turn. I didn't think we were going to be hitting these type of sensitive subjects for China.
Well, I'm not afraid of the Chinese censors. Dan might have to worry.
Yeah, that's
But,
what I was thinking about.
I doubt it. I mean, my basic rule of thumb is that nobody's going to watch anything that you do in English, but maybe that's overconfident. I mean, I know that like those guys like Sea Milk and Serpent ZA got in trouble, but I think that's because they were doing interviews in Chinese with Chinese people.
Oh, is that how they got in trouble?
At least that's what I think Lawai86, I saw his video, and that's what he said his particular reason for having to leave China was.
Okay.
Just to give context to the audience, these are like YouTubers. Serpent ZA is a South African white guy, biggest YouTuber in China, and then Lawai86 is his buddy, and they like ride motorcycles together. He also has a big channel, so they're probably like the two most well-known YouTubers in China who are no longer in China.
They were like forced to leave.
Yeah, they had some real problems.
Yeah, they said their apartment got raided by the government, and they took hard drives and they took their cameras, and that was the big event that caused them to leave.
Yeah. Well, they became really, especially Serpent ZA became really, a target for the, what did he call it? The Wumao, the 5-cent people on the internet who they would like, try and dox him and all this kind of stuff, find out where he's working, and kind of like what you said earlier with the Americans, but with him it was Chinese people doing it.
Yeah, that could be a real problem. For me, the Chinese tend to agree with me politically, but for him, yeah, I could see that being a big problem.
Yeah.
I told you the reason I left China was pollution. It was actually bigger than that. I was really feeling not safe there as an American for a while, because I got banned on WeChat a few times or locked out of my account, and the trade wars going on.
Happened. What kind of stuff were you posting that you banned?
Well, the most recent one, I shared a meme that had like 2 feet on a crack pipe, looked like it was giving it a foot job. It was a Hunter Biden meme, but it showed no genitals. It wasn't sexually inappropriate, but I think that was too sensitive because that whole Hunter Biden theory went into him being like a big stooge for China, right? So it was too sensitive for China, and it was just one meme, So if they're gonna go after my livelihood, I was really worried. If tensions rise between China and the U.S., I don't want to be caught in the middle of that. I don't want to be like that kid in Empire of the Sun who gets put in a prison camp, that kind of thing. Even though that was Japanese, but still, I have this fear of being separated from my family, my son being taken away by these strange foreign government or something. So I really felt like I need to go back home. I just for my long-term security for my family and everything.
Yeah, they would too. The CCP definitely would if tensions reached that point.
Yeah. So good luck over there, Dan.
Yes, good luck.
I'm an optimist. I don't think they're going to do anything crazy.
Well, you know how they stopped renewing visas for a while, right? Early on. Yeah. I kind of feel that was a way for them to peacefully kick out a lot of the non-Chinese.
Well, a lot of non-Chinese, but it's a particular sector, in Chinese minds, maybe the less desirable fraction of the expats. You know,
We kind of talk bad about a lot of expats, but I want to put it out there that China has some really high standards to get into in the first place. You all have to have college degrees from a reputable institution because now they check that, and it's not like the old China. And you have to have a special document signed off from your municipality that you have not been convicted of any crimes as well. So when people
if you want to teach legally, that is, there's
Yeah,
still I don't know about during Corona, but I mean, prior to Corona, at least, there were still a lot of people teaching on tourist visas.
okay, well that's illegal, and
Right.
everybody knows people does it, but it's not a thing that China allows if they have a say in it.
True.
But what I mean is that when everybody comes over to China, on paper they look like high skilled people. On paper,
You used to be able to get away with the fake degree. I knew a number of people who taught in Nanchang and they didn't finish college and they had fake degrees, but I think they wised up over in China and they kind of put a stop to that.
yeah. When I had to go, every single time I had to go back to America a few times, but every single time I switched jobs, I'd have to have my university degree go through that recertification process for China.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's. I just wanted to throw that out there because we make it sound like expats. There are a lot of loser expats in China, but in order to get there in the first place, they need to look like a high skilled person to begin with, on paper.
For sure.
So one thing I like about being an expat is meeting a bunch of weird expats. Meet a bunch of weird people who find themselves overseas. What are some of the weirdest expats you came across?
Dan.
I'm just thinking whether I can, reveal their names or not. But I mean, there have been some. Well, you meet the weirdest ones are the ones you meet on WeChat, like Carl. I think probably everybody knows Carl.
Yes. Carl.
What's
I even got him on the soundboard.
yeah?
I don't like Carl.
Guy with a passion for getting drunk and exposing himself in WeChat and in videos on WeChat. So yeah, you meet the really crazy ones, and our mutual friend. I don't know. Can I even say
Maz, or
Maz as
talk
well,
about that other.
Maz is a classic.
I was talking about
Yeah.
our mutual friend whose name also starts with an M. A lady, not really a friend of either of ours.
Oh,
Anyway.
she's yeah. I think she's more mentally ill, to be honest.
Yeah.
Is she Australian?
Yeah.
Yes. No,
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maz, he might be a little mentally ill, but he's so spastic. He's fun, and he's like a loser on one hand, but he keeps getting all these awesome jobs. So
I know, right?
maybe
Well,
he's
he's
not as
the-
big a loser as we think.
He's the real Mr. Worldwide. He even
Yes.
looks like Mr. Worldwide. So yeah, I want to explain who these people are because these are characters. Thing is, I don't know Dan. I kind of know him from WeChat groups, but this is the first time we've actually talked. Greyson, I know from WeChat. So both you guys are connections I made from WeChat. And you end up meeting these other connections. You see them in groups, or maybe they're not even in a group you're in, but one of their videos makes it into your group, and that's where Carl comes in. So Carl is this British dude who has a lot of videos where he's yelling at the camera, saying things like, and he's showing his penis while he's doing it. He's waving his sizable, pretty big, soft penis, and he's like slapping it against stuffed animals. It's doing all sorts of gross stuff with it. And
That's the one that went viral when he was raped that teddy bear.
Yeah, he had one where he like really fucked with a teddy bear. He has another one with like a dinosaur toy where it's like biting his cock. It's a scene. So yeah, not everybody's a big fan of Carl. I think he's hilarious. That's just me. I didn't save all of his videos. The ones with too much cock I didn't save on my phone, but I did save quite a few. And
So what about those other people?
Maz.
yeah, can you explain who Maz is?
Maz is a Canadian. What is there? He's really like famous for being famous, right? He just thinks that he's like, the best famous. He thinks he's the most famous guy in China, He seems to really believe that he's like the number one expat in China. And then I think he got famous because there was that one video where he got caught stealing from his school, and he was like so upset about it because it's totally contradicted his own self-image. But people became so obsessed with his life, and he was so willing to like overshare the details of his life with all these crazy outfits, buying gold, just like randomly buying gold, gold pieces. I don't know how to describe him as. He's an enigma.
Very eccentric, very eccentric. He's on Alibaba now. He does Alibaba live streaming, so he's recovered from his last beating. Maz, he'll get into trouble. So the thing with him, he'll get into trouble, and like stealing from his school, that was one of the times he got in trouble and he got fired. It's a big setback. Then there was he got talked about in the Canadian media as a scammer before he even went to China, and that went viral. So that was another setback.
Is that actually? I was never sure if that's really him or not.
Yeah, that's actually him. I went to the link. I went to the actual Canadian webpage to make sure it wasn't doctored, and it's Mazen Sawaf,
right.
Poor guy. But every single time he has one of these setbacks, he just comes back, and now he's on Alibaba. So I guess he's an inspiration for don't let a setback ruin your life. You could still make it onto Alibaba Live.
Yeah, somebody's going to make a movie about him someday. Inspiration.
Yeah.
Well, let me play this video real quick, because I have a hobby where I like to make compilation videos of crazy expats and the WeChat videos that get shared around. So I'm just going to play one. This one features Carl, not his cock, but you'll get the Carl experience.
Paris just king hit me 20 times in the face for no reason at all.
There he is.
We're gonna report this to the police. Paris, you're gonna get deported. This is King and the King right now.
All I want to say to you is, piss off,
I'm trying to make a friend with this girl.
fuck off, fuck off, fuck off. You're a cunt, you're a cunt, you're a cunt, you're a wanker, you're a cunt, you're a fucking cunt, you're a cunt. Fuck off, you're a fucking piece of shit.
So that was it.
That's Carl.
Carl.
We even had the guy in there, the Jungle Genitalia. That dude made it in too.
That's his funniest name, I remember. Who was the guy at the beginning? Like British guy, or I don't know.
He's
guy got
Australian.
punched.
His name's Josh. He became kind of a celebrity in the China Circle Jerk community. It was a community on Reddit and had WeChat groups that kind of stemmed out from that. And he was just this Australian guy who was always, I guess, getting in, like, I guess he would always kind of ask for it. He was confrontational, and then people would start making fun of him, but he would kind of feed the trolls a lot, and then he became this like meme essentially. And that was a video of him where he got punched in the face because he was being obnoxious or something, and some guy just started kicking his ass in a nightclub.
You can see though how amazingly toxic, I mean, CCJ, right? And just the whole circle is so toxic, but it's also like, it's like that kind of toxic stuff where you like can't look away.
Yeah, I love it, but I don't really like the mean-spirited side of some of it. People say I'm part of CC Gay, not CCJ. So I'm not like a real CCJ. I'm a CC Gayer.
Well, the CCJ crew is kind of like the people that China breaks. They come to China before they're probably somewhat functioning, and they come to China, and it just brings out the worst in them, their worst characteristics and their worst personality traits, and it amplifies it.
Yeah, it was just a lot of them are trolls as well. They were probably trolls back home, and then it amped up a lot in China because there's a lot of fodder, you could say. There's a lot of stuff that feeds trolls in China.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It used to be on WeChat, it was just so easy to troll people because of the group function. They hadn't really perfected the administration like settings for groups, so you could just join these groups of strangers and spam vile filth into their group, and for some people that was their source of amusement, and they would just do it over and over.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
it's
nowadays
horrible
it's
stuff. Like
Yeah.
rape porn, gore, feces. I mean, it's not like laugh funny stuff. It's just gross and
Yeah.
Yeah.
disgusting.
I remember when China Circle Jerk became kind of big on Reddit. This is like 2012, 2013. And there was a WeChat group that was creative out of it. And I was like, oh my God, that's so cool. There's a WeChat group. I'm going to go in and meet some of these people. And then I go in and it's like 100 meat spin gifs, like constantly just shooting into that group. I just left. I'm like, I don't want to be a part of this. This is nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like WeChat's really improved though with the administration, because before, especially like I ran some groups, Dan's ran some groups, you have to be on point as the administrator. If the wrong person gets in, then they could just ruin it. They could send a whole bunch of these, and you'll have your members leaving. So
Yeah, right.
they would destroy your group, and you have to be really on point.
And the administrator is legally liable. I've never heard of any like actual prosecutions, but I mean, it was like made explicit that, you know, if somebody posts pornography in your group, then you are legally responsible for that pornography, which is illegal in China. So
I've noticed you need to be reported in Chinese. English language reports probably get ignored because I've been reported. I know I have, but they've never written it in Chinese.
Well, I've got it. But it was...
Yeah.
I don't know who reported me, and I have a feeling that a lot of it's rather automated. Like, they have some kind of content recognition software, kind of like on YouTube. If you upload, like, a popular song, they may give you a copyright strike. They have software that recognizes it. But on WeChat, let's say there's a meme that's not, you know, on the party line. It's something that's not going to fly in China. Maybe this meme gets flagged by somebody in a group somewhere. And then if I autonomously send this meme to another group, the system automatically picks up that visual. And then they flag me, and then my account gets locked.
Do you guys know Bon Fing Fing on WeChat?
Yep.
Yeah, he found out that there's ways that you can get around the censorship by downloading something and making a copy of it. So it's something in the code. He's really expert at getting around the WeChat censorship. He'll take videos that...
I can speak to that because I also found ways around it. So since it's content recognition software, it's easy to trick. So do you remember when that Uniqlo sex tape happened in Beijing? This was several years ago, but there was basically a guy and a girl having sex in the dressing room at a Uniqlo clothing shop, and they filmed it and it went viral. People were even wondering, was this like a guerrilla marketing campaign for Uniqlo? So I was trying to share the video to some friends on WeChat who are in America. They're like some old high school friends that I got on WeChat, and I was sending a video, and I was like, hey, what do you think of this video? And then they're like, what video? So the video didn't even show up for them, even though I sent it and it shows up on my side. So it was like shadow banned. So what I did was I applied like a filter to the video and cropped it a little bit, and that it went through then. It was fine.
Yep.
But they are getting more sophisticated.
Yeah, just look at the translate feature on WeChat. If you have a picture of Chinese words, it can translate and like change the words to English. I mean, I guess Google has something like that too. But that means they could read all the text on a meme or something and then flag any controversial speech.
Yeah, Facebook actually does that. I've noticed Facebook will auto tag and auto write out the speech on some of my memes. It's really weird.
Yeah. I actually know a guy in Austin, Greyson, who does the engineering side of all that stuff.
We should go visit him. So, Dan,
Yeah.
if you ever come back to America,
Let us
Nate
know how to game the system.
We met in real life, and he came with me to crash Alex Jones' studio, the InfoWars. So we actually found his hidden studio, and he hasn't had me on yet, but hopefully he will. I've been talking with Tara, who Alex has a secret little thing for. I mean, it's weird when you start getting into this world, you know, but when you come back, we should all hang out and we'll go crash Alex Jones again.
It was pretty crazy how you did that, because you had a picture of Alex Jones in his studio, and you could see there's a window behind him, and you can kind of see the building opposite of where he's sitting, and you were able to get on Google Maps and track down that building complex from the picture. That's some autistic magic right there.
Yeah, it took a while, but I was able to do it. There's a lot of misinformation online about where his studio is.
Yeah, and we were able to actually find it. And Greyson, we got stopped by some security guards, and Greyson was talking to them off the cuff, saying he had an appointment with Alex, and they took him seriously, and it was the real deal. Like, we actually found the secret InfoWars studio.
How was it?
We didn't get inside.
Oh.
But the security guards confirmed that it was the place. And they were actually really truthful with me. They said Alex Jones just left. He flew out. I was like, oh, dang, you know, I missed him. And I find out later on he flew to Arizona, to the place that I was going to pretty much when I got back from Texas. So I went to see Nate instead of Alex. That's how I put it.
Nice.
So yeah, you come back to America, we're going to have a lot of these cool adventures.
Excellent.
You always have a place with us.
Look forward to it.
Hey guys, it's been an hour and 46 minutes. Do you guys have to go or anything? Let me know if like we're going over time or anything.
I'm probably going to go have lunch pretty soon.
Okay, so like another 10 minutes so we can wrap it up.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Because I'm probably just gonna drink and then play some games and earn some lemons.
Nice.
Are you gonna stream on DLive with the game?
Probably. I'll probably watch some YouTube. I don't have any games on my computer, so. And then I also have this thing on my DLive where I tell people not to play video games, so. Then they see me playing games.
And that's a gaming, like game streaming platform for the most part. There's a lot of like right-wing political stuff going on in DLive these days, but it's mostly gamers, yeah.
Yeah, that's what makes it funny. The last time I told people to stop playing video games, I get these messages in the group. I think and it wasn't in the Pure Politics Telegram group, but a couple of them, they were saying, oh yeah, because you said that, I'm not going to play video games so often anymore. It's like, that's weird. You know, I just said video games suck, and now you're like, I agree with you. I hate my games. Yeah.
Well, jumping back to China.
You actually believe it?
Oops, sorry.
You're not able to follow your own advice, or?
Oh, I mean, no, I don't have games on my computer. Period. That's what I mean. I'm not able to play them even if I wanted to. They just don't. They don't exist on my computer.
Nice.
And I feel video gaming's fine if you do it in moderation, but people really got to look at how much time it's taking in their life and what kind of values they're getting out from it. Because they could spend that time doing other things. Like you study Chinese, Dan, and I'm pretty sure you're not a big gamer. We've hung out a few times, and we've never talked about video games. So
yeah, I mean, I have a addictive personality, and when I do get into a game, I mean, really the last time this happened was with World of Warcraft in high school, where I just like got totally addicted to it and was going to take over my life. So then I just stopped playing it, and I've never gone back to it, even though I really want to. Actually, talking about I think it was on Twitch, I saw some streamers playing World of Warcraft and had that feeling of like I wanted to go do that, but I'm not going to let myself.
Grayson, you told me a funny story about the company you did marketing at, and that was a game company, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Maybe this is where my anti-video game sentiments stem from, is this video game company that I worked for. They did a lot of video games, a lot of app games, and they also did regular apps. So it's, they had a little bit of everything. That's why I call it a technology company, but I worked on the gaming side. And pretty much I got paid to play all their games, and I would get really good at them. And I'd talk with the customers, and I'd design marketing programs for them and do a lot of digital marketing. but we filmed videos. I have some videos of me playing the game with my Chinese coworkers. We're all having a good time. We're holding our phones and making it look like action. When in real life, you just you sit there and you play, but because it's a video, you gotta be moving around and laughing and pointing at your friends. So that's kind of what I did. I did a little bit of everything: videos, graphic design, digital marketing, and the company was a video game company.
But didn't you, in the ads, it wasn't always the game that the company made that you're promoting?
No, this is actually this is out of my control, and I went to the CEO to talk about this. At some point in time after I'd been there, I think 2 years, they started running these ads, and nobody told me about it. I found out about it on my own while just checking the regular marketing stuff. They started running these ads for our games that had videos from completely different games in them. And then we started getting all this abuse, this online abuse of, this is not your game, stop stealing, hate China. And then they even started calling them chinks, which got everybody else kind of incensed and got me able to talk to the CEO. And ultimately what it came down to was they didn't really care that they were running different game videos for their advertisements. They just cared about the clicks, and they said, just deal with it. So
this is performance marketing, Greyson.
What is?
No, the whole thing with performance marketing, it's there's not much of a lot of the time, the companies don't really care much about the creative quality. They just care that they have a lot of variety of content, and they shoot them all out to people, and then the algorithms and the AI kind of learns which videos do better, and they start feeding that to more people. And they're thinking, well, if these videos do so well, sure, they're not our game, but they're getting us those results we want. So the marketers are hitting their KPI, they're hitting their numbers, but it's not really good for the brand at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's what I was concerned with a lot when I was at Locojoy. Is they put the name Locojoy in all of their games, and you go on Steam, or you go on the app marketplace, and you can look up all the Locojoy games through that. When we were advertising this way, and we even had problems with other games of copying stuff directly from World of Warcraft, one of them, that we get this reputation as a company as a whole that we're Chinese, number one. Everybody knows that it's a Chinese company, and they steal content and they promote it with fake content. So it bleeds over into all the future endeavors that they want to do, and this really concerned me, but they didn't really care. So that was frustrating.
Dan, you ever deal with any shady business, any of the jobs you've had, any kind of funny business going on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can talk about it in detail, but I mean, the real estate company I worked for had projects in New York, and there was basically, we hired a contractor in New York to pretty much take over some of the projects for us, because it was a Beijing-based company. And it turned out that there was a lot of waste and inefficiency, and yet this contractor kept on getting hired to do more and more projects. And then it turned out that there were, kickbacks, and I had a coworker who was just getting paid by this company to work with them. So very, very shady.
It's a very ambiguous way to say corruption.
Definitely corruption.
Yeah, I can imagine you have a lot of interesting stories that you can't share until you leave China, Dan.
Maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
What's keeping you over there?
My wife, she likes her job. I like my job at the moment, and just kind of feel like going to America would be tough for both of us. looking for new jobs. I think, we're both used to living here, and at the moment, certainly with COVID, it seems to be the safest place to be. So
I have to agree with that. America has a lot of unemployment, and we have a lot of political turmoil happening. Partly why pure politics is doing so well. So, I mean, security-wise, safety, and job security as well. Yeah, Dan, 100% agree with you.
Right.
Do you have kids?
Not yet. Yeah, that would definitely be a factor. You mentioned your son, and I think if I do, when and if I do have kids, I'll have to think long and hard about whether I want to stay here for them.
But you got
Well,
that
how do you feel about
international
Chinese
school
education?
That's the problem. I mean, you have to choose between Chinese education, which is very, indoctrinating and not good in a lot of ways, versus, international schools, which are super expensive.
But you could get the free tuition, right? Since you work there.
Yeah, in theory. I mean, this is the school I work at is only a high school.
Oh. Yeah, I went to international school in Taiwan. I mentioned that, but also Japan, and it's insane tuition numbers. But my dad was on one of those traditional expat packages, so the companies covered all of it. But that was another thing I was dealing with. I'm an expat in Shanghai, but I'm not on a package like that. I have to pay for school out of my own pocket. So I was sending my kid to a preschool in Jing'an district, like near where we lived, right in the heart of Shanghai, and it was like 7,000 RMB a month for half-a-day classes. And
that's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad. It was a small school, and it was mostly Chinese kids, but there was like a little Indian girl in there and some other kids from around the world. But once he was going to go into proper elementary school, we'd have to drop some big bucks to send him to one of the the nice K through 12 schools.
Yeah. Yeah, the school I work at now, the tuition is $65,000 US.
A year?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's more than college in a lot of places.
I know. It's crazy.
All right, guys, you probably got to run, Dan. I think we can wrap it up. Is there anything you'd like to plug before you go? I know you did it in the beginning, but you may as well do it again.
Yeah, you guys can, if you have Douyin, you can find me at Jia Lao Wai. And if not, then you should get Douyin.
Douyin is Chinese TikTok.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm American Greyson. You can check out my page on YouTube at Pure Politics, Pure. I've been going to a lot of these DC rallies. I've been going to a lot of the state capitol protests. So interesting videos. And yeah, you don't need to be politically minded on one side or the other. I try to be bipartisan, but it's definitely some interesting happenings that are going on in America.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. Taking the time. Happy New Year.
Yeah, Xinian Kuai-le.
Xinian Kuai-le. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Greyson, for bringing me on.
For sure.
This went a little long.
It did. Very long.
I can tell.
It was longer than I expected. Yeah.
Dan's gotten a little sleepy. I feel sleepy.
All right, I'm gonna cut it.